Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another visual pattern challenge. Here's our pattern today. Here's step one, here's step two, here's step three, and your challenge is to predict the number of stars in step four. If you can do that, can you predict the number in step 43? And can you write an equation along the way to express the number of stars in any step at all? So that's the challenge. If you'd like to accept it, pause the video and give it a shot. Okay, so it looks like we have these crossing lines, kind of tic-tac-toe lines, and then we're putting a star at every intersection and on the ends as well. So, vaguely these are like squares, so I'm thinking we're going to have a quadratic pattern here, but I guess we can look at the numbers and check that out. Let's see if we can just predict step four, though. Maybe we can think of this as a horizontal and then the bits left on the top and the bottom. So first I got one horizontal line, then two, then three. So I think I'd have four horizontal lines in step four. And then the number of stars on those lines, first it's three, then four, then five. So these should be six each. So those are the horizontal lines. And then the top and the bottom, there's one on the top and bottom, then two on the top and two on the bottom, then three on the top and three on the bottom. So this should be four on the top and four on the bottom. So if this diagram doesn't make sense, you could go ahead and write out that grid and fill in all the stars, but it should come out to be this. Let's see, this is 6 times 4 is 24 plus 8, 32. So we've got 32 stars in step 4, I think. And, so I think if you've been following along in these videos, this pattern might actually look familiar to the one we did just yesterday. If you actually completed these squares, if you turn these sort of crisscrosses into squares, what you get is a grid of squares where everything's filled in with stars, all the intersections except the corners. And when we looked at that yesterday, what we did is we created an equation to explain that and explain how many stars you'd get if you actually had a grid of all, including the corners, filled in, and then subtracting the four corners. There's a little bit of a difference. I mean, we can fill this one in too and think about it. So a little bit of a difference in this, because if you remember that pattern, if you did that pattern, the very first one was just a square with no stars at all because they were all corners. Here we're starting already with a 2 by 2 grid of squares, which means if you filled in all the stars, you'd have a 3 by 3 grid of stars. And this is step one. Here, if you filled in all the stars, including the corners, you'd have a 4 by 4 grid. So it looks like we're 2 more than the step number for the size of this grid of stars. So yesterday we came up with an equation that was, x plus, in this case it would have to be 2, and then square that. So we'll take the step number and add 2 to it. That's going to give us this 3 by 3 grid of stars you'd have in step 1. And then the corners aren't filled in, so you subtract the corners. There are 4 corners. So this would be a 4 by 4 grid of stars. So step 2 plus 2, that's 4. Then you square it to get that 4 by 4 grid, 16 stars, and then subtract the corners. So this looks like a promising equation. Let's actually analyze the numbers first and see if this will be verified by what the numbers say. So I'm going to make a chart with the step number and the number of stars. And let's see, step 1 we have 5. Step 2, that's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And step 3, 3 times 5 is 15, plus 6 more is 21. And then we're saying in step 4 we should have 32. So let's go ahead and analyze these by taking the difference between each step. So 12 minus 5 is 7, 21 minus 12, that's 9, 32 minus 21 is 11. We didn't get a constant there, so this is not a linear pattern. That makes sense. We're thinking it's quadratic. So let's take the difference of the differences. 9 minus 7 is 2, and 11 minus 9 is also 2. So that's where we get our constant. And if you get a constant in the difference of the differences, it is quadratic. So our highest term here is going to be x squared. And that makes sense. If you FOIL that out, you'd get an x squared for your highest term. Now that I've got this quadratic verified, I'm actually starting to see something in the pattern, and I think I'm going to grab a different color to sketch this out. Oftentimes this is a strategy I'll use if I know my highest term is x squared. I will go ahead and just mark out an x squared and see what's left over. So in step 1, 1 squared is 1. So I've put this blue box around 1 star, and I've got just 1 star around it on all those points. Let's do that in step 2. So here's a 2 by 2 square. And then I've got stars on all 4 compass points too, but this time 2 stars on each. If we do that in the third one, you've got this 3 by 3 grid here, and then yes, 3 on the top, 3 on the left, 3 on the bottom, 3 on the right. So this, you could write an equation from this, and let's go ahead and do that. So I'm having x squared first, and then I've got first 4 stars, then 8 stars, and then 12 stars. This is the step number times 4. So 4x. So this looks like our equation. Now it looks different from this, but actually let's FOIL this part out. If you did that, you get x squared plus 4x plus 4 minus 4. Aha, so plus 4 minus 4, those add up to 0. We get x squared plus 4x. So really, this is the same thing. So we've arrived at the same equation from 2 different directions, which usually is a pretty good sign. So I'm confident about this formula. Let's just test it with one of these. I'm going to plug in step 3. So this would be 3 squared plus 4 times 3. So 3 squared is 9, and 4 times 3 is 12. 9 plus 12 would be 21, and yes, that's exactly how many we have in step 3. So I think our equation is y equals x squared plus 4x. Now to calculate the number of stars in step 43, we're going to plug 43 in for x. So y equals 43 squared plus 4 times 43. And 43 squared is 1849. 4 times 40 is 160. 4 times 3 is 12, so 172. And let's see, that is 2021. So at step 43, we should have 2021 stars. Well, how did that go for you? Had you done yesterday's problem, and had you seen the connection between the two? Did you get 32 for step 4? Let me know. Thanks, everybody.